My daughter-in-law stood in my kitchen on a Sunday morning, holding my late wife's pearl necklace up to the window light, turning it slowly like she was appraising it at a pawn shop. She didn't know I was watching from the hallway. She set it back in the velvet box, but she didn't close the lid all the way. That told me everything I needed to know. The next morning, I changed the locks on the master bedroom. When she rattled the knob and demanded I explain myself, I smiled and poured her a cup of coffee. "Sit down. Sweetheart," I said. "We need to talk about a few things." She crossed her arms and smirked. "You really think you can tell me what to do in my own house?" That's when the front door opened. My son walked in first. Then two other people stepped into the living room behind him. And when my daughter-in-law turned around and saw who they were, her face went the color of old chalk. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, because this story is worth telling, right? My name is Gerald Whitfield. Everybody calls me Jerry. I turned 67 this past September. Born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. Though I spent 32 years working for the railroad out of Nashville before I retired, I built this house with my own two hands and a contractor loan back in 1988. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a workshop out back where I still go most mornings to clear my head. My wife Dorothy Dot, I always called her, picked out every piece of furniture in this house. The blue curtains in the front room, the oak table in the dining room that seats 8, the little ceramic bluebirds lined up on the windowsill in the kitchen. 34 years we lived in this house together. And when she passed from ovarian cancer 3 years ago, I couldn't move a single thing. Felt wrong, like erasing her. One son, Thomas Gerald Whitfield. Tommy, 38 years old. I coached his little league team when he was 10. Taught him to drive a manual in the church parking lot on a Saturday morning. Watched him graduate from University of Tennessee with a business degree and thought, Dorothy, we did something right. He married a woman named Serena about 5 years ago. I want to be fair here, because fair is what I am. In the beginning, Serena seemed fine. She was pretty, sharp, knew how to work a room. She called me Dad from the first Thanksgiving, and I thought that was sweet. Dorothy liked her well enough. Though she told me once in the quiet of our bedroom, there's something behind that smile. Jerry, I can't put my finger on it. I told her she was being too hard. I was wrong. Dorothy always was the smarter one. They lived over in Murfreesboro for the first few years. Tommy was doing well, selling commercial insurance. They had a nice apartment. Talked about buying a house. Then about 8 months after Dorothy passed, Tommy called me on a Tuesday evening. Voice tight. Words careful. Dad, we've hit a rough patch financially. Serena's been dealing with some health stuff. She had to cut back her hours. And I had a rough quarter. We were wondering if just temporarily, if we could move in with you, just to get back on our feet. I want to tell you I hesitated. I want to tell you something in me knew. But the truth is I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Because Tommy is my son. Because the house was too quiet. Because every morning I made 2 cups of coffee before I remembered they moved in 6 weeks later. 2 cars in my driveway. Boxes stacked in the hallway. Serena's perfume filling up the rooms that still smelled like Dorothy's lavender candles. Tommy seemed stressed but grateful. He unpacked things quietly. Helped me fix the gutter on the east side of the house that first weekend. And I thought, this is going to be all right. We'll get through this together. I was right about one thing. We got through it together. Just not the way I imagined. The first sign I missed was small. Serena reorganizing the kitchen cabinets 3 days after they moved in. I came downstairs and all of Dorothy's things, the ceramic rooster she kept by the stove, the little recipe box with her handwriting on the index cards, the bluebird salt and pepper shakers were in a cardboard box on the counter. I just thought we'd make better use of the space. Serena said without looking at me, "There's so much clutter in here." Clutter. 34 years of a woman's life. And that was the word she used. I said, gently, that I'd like things to stay the way they were. Dorothy had a system. Serena smiled and said, of course, and put most things back. But the recipe box ended up in a drawer, and the ceramic rooster didn't come back at all. I found it in the garage 3 weeks later. I told myself it was an adjustment period. Everyone needed time. The second sign was harder to ignore. About 2 months in, I came home from my Tuesday coffee with my buddy Ray. We'd been doing that every week for 15 years. Same booth at the same diner on Kingston Pike, and found Serena on the phone in my living room. Pacing. She didn't hear me come in. I caught pieces. The property value alone. No. He won't move. He's stubborn. I know. But eventually, she turned, saw me, smiled wide and fast, said, I'll call you back into the phone. Just chatting with my sister. She said, how was coffee? I said it was fine. I went to my workshop, sat at my bench for a long time, stared at the little birdhouse Tommy made in 2nd grade that still hangs on the wall. Told myself I'd misheard. Told myself I was a paranoid old man rattling around in a big house, looking for problems. Dorothy used to call it my worst-case scenario mind. She wasn't wrong, but I started paying attention over the next 2 months. I noticed the pattern. Serena called her sister or whoever it was regularly when she thought the house was empty. Always in the living room. Always pacing. Always stopped when she heard me. She started having long conversations with Tommy in their bedroom at night with the door closed. Not arguments. Something quieter. Strategic. I'd hear her voice. Low and steady. And Tommy responding in short answers like a man being walked through a set of instructions. Tommy changed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But I'd known that boy for 38 years. I knew his face like I knew my own hands. He stopped meeting my eyes at dinner. Stopped coming out to the workshop on weekends like he used to. Started repeating things. Almost word for word. That Serena had said to me earlier in the day. Little suggestions at first. Dad, have you thought about downsizing? This house is a lot to maintain for one person. One person. I was living in my own home and she'd made me a guest in it. The 3rd month, the suggestions got less gentle. Serena started mentioning memory care facilities. Casually. The way you mentioned the weather. My aunt had a place like that and she loved it. She had friends there. Activities. I was 67. I ran 3 miles every Tuesday and Thursday morning. I had all my faculties, but she kept planting the seed, and I watched Tommy water it with his silence. That's when I understood what was happening. She wasn't going to push me out with a fight. She was going to make me feel like leaving was my idea. Like staying was the burden. Like the house I built. The rooms that held my wife's whole life were somehow too much for me to handle. She was going to make me small enough to slip through the door on my own. I'm a man who spent 32 years reading railroad schedules. I understand the difference between a train that's late and a train that's been deliberately rerouted. This train had been rerouted. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because in my experience, when you name a thing too early, you give the other person time to adjust their story. I needed to understand the whole picture first. So I did what seemed natural for a retired man with time on his hands. I started writing things down. I kept a small spiral notebook in my shirt pocket. Nothing dramatic. Just dates. Times. Exact words? Tuesday, October 11th. Serena tells Tommy I seemed confused at breakfast. I was not confused. I was reading the newspaper. Thursday, October 20th. Found master bedroom door, locked at 2 p.m. My bedroom. My house. November Thigar? Tommy asks if I've updated my will recently. Says it's just good planning. First time he's brought this up in 38 years. I called my old friend Harold Greer in early November. Harold had been a family attorney in Knoxville for over 40 years. We'd known each other since our boys played baseball together in the 90s. I asked him to meet me at the diner on a Wednesday morning, without mentioning it to anyone at the house. I brought my notebook. Harold read every page with his reading glasses halfway down his nose. When he finished, he folded his hands on the table and looked at me. "Jerry," he said, "I want you to do 3 things. First, get the deed to your property, reviewed and confirm. Nothing has been filed or changed. Second, check your bank accounts, all of them. Third, call your doctor and get a full cognitive evaluation on record, dated and documented, because if someone is building a case that you're not of sound mind, you want a counter record that says otherwise." I asked him if he thought I was overreacting. He took a long sip of his coffee before he answered, "I think your instincts built a railroad career. I'd trust them." I drove to the bank that afternoon, spoke with the branch manager, a woman named Patricia who'd known me for 20 years. I asked to review all account activity on anything with my name attached. Patricia's expression didn't change, but her eyes did. She turned her monitor slightly toward me and pointed at a line item from 6 weeks earlier. A joint checking account Tommy and I had set up years ago for home maintenance expenses, gutters, repairs, that sort of thing. There had been a signature card update 3 months ago. Serena's name had been added 2 weeks after that. 4 withdrawals. Not massive amounts. Careful amounts. The kind that don't trigger automatic flags. $1,200 here. $900 there. Total $4,300. Over 14 days. I kept my face neutral. I thanked Patricia. I asked her to print the statement. I folded it and put it in my shirt pocket next to my notebook. I drove home. I put the car in the garage, walked into my workshop, sat at my bench, and allowed myself exactly 10 minutes of feeling everything I needed to feel. The betrayal, the grief that it had come to this, the particular sadness of watching your child become someone you don't recognize. Then I picked up the phone and called Harold back. The next 3 weeks were the most deliberate of my life. Harold advised me carefully and clearly. He contacted a colleague who specialized in financial elder abuse. We documented everything. He helped me understand what we could prove and what we still needed. The bank statements were significant. The notebook was useful, but Harold said what would matter most in any proceeding was clear evidence of intent, pattern, and the state of my mental capacity. That last part wasn't hard. My doctor, a man named Dr. Carroll, whom I'd been seeing for 12 years, conducted a full evaluation and wrote a 3-page report concluding I was in excellent cognitive and physical health for my age. He asked me twice why I needed it documented. The second time I told him the truth, he didn't say much. Just signed the report and told me his office was available if I needed anything. I also called my nephew Daniel. He's 32. Works in IT security. Lives over in Chattanooga. Good young man. I asked him to help me set up a small home security system cameras at the front door, back door, and covering the living room area. Not hidden. Exactly. Legal. Daniel drove over on a Saturday when Tommy and Serena were out for the day, and we installed everything in about 4 hours. I told him what was going on. He didn't say a word until we were finished. Then he hugged me and said, "Uncle Jerry, you should have called me sooner. I should have," but pride is a heavy thing to set down, especially for a man my age, for my generation. You don't ask for help. You handle what's yours. Except sometimes what's yours is being taken from you one quiet Tuesday morning at a time. And handling it alone just means losing slower. December came. Things in the house felt different now. I felt different. Not afraid. Not angry. Focused. I went about my routine morning coffee. Tuesday runs with Ray. Evenings in the workshop, and I watched and I recorded and I waited. The Sunday that changed everything started like any other. I came downstairs around 7:30. Serena was already up. She was in the master bedroom, my bedroom, Dorothy's bedroom, and the door was half open. I stopped in the hallway. She was at Dorothy's jewelry box on the dresser. The one with the little brass key that I kept on my key ring. She'd found it somewhere. Apparently. Because the lid was up. She was holding Dorothy's pearl necklace up toward the window, turning it in the morning light. Not wearing it. Studying it. The way you study something before you decide what it's worth. I stood in that hallway for a long moment. Watched my daughter-in-law hold my dead wife's pearls up to the light in my dead wife's bedroom, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been bending for months, finally, go still and straight. Not rage. Clarity. I stepped back. Went downstairs. Made coffee. Sat at the oak dining room table and looked at the blue curtains Dorothy had picked out at a little shop on Market Square, and I thought, no. Not one more thing. Not one more inch. That evening, I called Harold. Told him what I'd seen. Told him I was ready. Monday, Harold said. We move Monday. Sunday night, I barely slept. Not from fear. From the particular restlessness of a man who has made a decision and is waiting for morning to act on it. Around 2 a.m., I got up. Went to the workshop. Sat with the light on and looked at the birdhouse on the wall and the little hammer Tommy had used at 8 years old. Still hanging on the nail where I put it 30 years ago, I thought about the boy who used to bring me coffee out here on cold Saturday mornings. Still in his pajamas. Insisting he was warm enough. I thought about the man upstairs sleeping in my house, who had watched his wife inventory my belongings, and said nothing. I didn't understand it completely, Harold told me. Serena had likely been building financial dependency over years, isolating Tommy from his own judgment the way water cuts stone. Slow and patient. Maybe. But Tommy was still my son, still responsible for his choices. That's the part that hurt most. Not the money. Not the jewelry box. That my boy had been in this house for 5 months and watched and said nothing. Maybe didn't see it. Maybe didn't want to. Monday morning I was up at 5:30. I showered. Dressed in clean slacks and my navy button-down. The one Dorothy always said made my eyes look sharp. I went downstairs and I cooked. Not a simple breakfast. A real one. The kind that fills a house with a smell that reaches upstairs through the ceiling. Thick-cut bacon from the butcher on Magnolia. Scrambled eggs with cream and cheddar the way Dorothy taught me. Low and slow. Drop biscuits from her recipe card, the one I'd retrieved from the drawer months ago and put back exactly where she kept it. Strong coffee. Orange juice from real oranges. Squeezed by hand. I set the dining room table. Not the kitchen table. The dining room. With the good placemats and the cloth napkins Dorothy saved for company. 4 settings. Everything squared, and even then I sat at the head of the table, folded my hands, and waited. I didn't have to wait long for Harold's knock. 8 o'clock sharp. I opened the door, and there he was. Dark coat. Briefcase. 71 years old, and steady as a courthouse pillar. Behind him, a woman named Agent Linda Marsh, from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Unit. And beside her, a uniformed officer from the Knoxville Police Department. I shook Harold's hand. He looked at my face for a moment and nodded. Just once. We walked inside. I settled them at the dining room table. Harold and Agent Marsh sat on one side. The officer stood near the hallway entrance. Back straight. Professional. Visat. The food steamed. We waited. Upstairs. The pipes kicked on at 8:12. The shower. Then footsteps crossing the ceiling. Then the familiar sound of someone coming down the stairs, Serena first. She always came down before Tommy. Moving with the quick certainty of someone who'd made this house her routine. She turned the corner into the dining room and stopped, took in the table. The food. Me at the head. Hands folded. Her eyes moved across the room before she registered the other people. And in that half-second, I saw its satisfaction. The same smile I'd watched her wear when she thought she was winning. It lasted exactly as long. As it took her gaze to reach Harold Greer, the smile didn't leave so much as it dissolved. The way frost disappears in sunlight. Her hand went to the doorframe. "What is this?" Her voice came out almost steady. I said, "Good morning. Serena, sit down. Please. There's coffee." She didn't sit. Her eyes went to Agent Marsh. To the officer. Back to me. "Who are these people?" Her voice had changed. "Register now." The command underneath it, the one I'd been hearing for 5 months, was gone. What was left was smaller. Harold opened his briefcase and set a manila folder on the table. Deliberate and unhurried. The motion of a man who had done this 100 times. "My name is Harold Greer," he said. "I'm Gerald Whitfield's attorney of 30 years. This is Agent Linda Marsh from the TBI's Financial Crimes Division, and Officer Chen from KPD. We're here this morning to discuss several matters involving financial activity in accounts held by Gerald Whitfield, and to serve you with documents pertaining to those findings." Serena's mouth opened, closed. Tommy appeared in the doorway behind her. He was still in the t-shirt he'd slept in. Hair uncombed. Seeing the room for the first time, the food. The people. Me at the head of the table, in my button-down with my hands folded like a man who has been waiting patiently and is done waiting. "Dad." His voice came out like a question. What's going on?" I looked at my son. I let myself look at him fully, the way I hadn't allowed myself to in months because it hurt too much. He looked confused. He looked frightened. And underneath both of those things, I saw something I hadn't expected. He looked ashamed. Not the way guilty people look when they're caught. The way lost people look when someone finally holds up a light. "Sit down." "Tommy," I said. Quiet. No anger in it. He sat. Agent Marsh opened her own folder and walked through it calmly. Point by point. The unauthorized account addition. The $4,300. A separate savings account Dorothy and I had held jointly, one that I had not known until 2 weeks ago had been listed with an incorrect beneficiary designation. A clerical update filed 9 weeks earlier with a signature that Harold's handwriting consultant had reviewed and found inconsistent with mine. Serena's attorney had been busy. Serena stood through all of it with her arms crossed, her face cycling through indignation and calculation and something harder to name. But she didn't interrupt. I think she understood by then that interrupting wasn't going to help her. Tommy sat very still. He asked one question, in a voice I hadn't heard since he was about 12 and had broken something in the garage and had to tell me about it. "Dad, the savings account. Did you know about that? I found out 2 weeks ago." I said. He turned to Serena. He didn't say anything. He just turned and looked at her. That was enough. Serena said, "Tommy, I can explain all of this. Some of these are misunderstandings. The account thing was supposed to be a surprise. I was going to tell you." "Stop." Tommy's voice came out firm in a way I hadn't heard from him in years. Just that one word. He looked at the table. His jaw worked. Then he looked at me. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know about the account. I need you to believe me. The rest of it, I knew things weren't right. I saw things and I told myself." He stopped, pressed his lips together. "I'm sorry. That doesn't cover it. But I'm sorry." I believed him about the account. I wasn't sure yet about the rest of it. That was something that would take longer than one morning at a dining room table to sort out. Agent Marsh finished her summary and served Serena with the formal notice, which outlined the investigation, the findings, and the next required steps. Serena took the envelope with the expression of someone accepting a verdict they'd spent months telling themselves would never come. Officer Chen stepped forward, spoke briefly and professionally to both of them about the terms of what came next and what was expected of them in the coming days. I let Harold handle the rest of the conversation. I sat at the head of my dining room table with Dorothy's blue curtains framing the November light coming in through the front window. And I drank my coffee. And I let justice do what I had set it in motion to do. They left that afternoon, both of them together, bags in the trunk of Serena's car. Tommy paused at the front door for a long moment with his hand on the frame. He looked back at me. "Can I call you?" he asked. "Give me some time," I said. "Then yes." He nodded. He looked like the boy who used to bring me coffee in the cold. Smaller than he'd been an hour ago. More honest than he'd been in months. He walked out. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway for a minute, just breathing. Then I went back to the dining room, cleared the breakfast plates, washed them by hand the way Dorothy always insisted, no dishwasher for the good china, and set them back in the cabinet where they belonged. The investigation took several months. Harold and Agent Marsh and I spent a lot of cold January mornings at Harold's office, going through documents and giving statements. It was slow, unglamorous work. Nothing like what you see on television. Serena hired a defense attorney who argued misunderstanding on the account additions and challenged the signature discrepancy. It was not a clean or simple process, but the documentation held: the notebook, the bank statements, the security footage from the living room showing the Sunday morning with Dorothy's jewelry box, which became relevant not to a criminal charge, but to the civil proceedings that followed. Dr. Carroll's cognitive evaluation, which made the argument that I was an incapacitated man, being manipulated a great deal harder to sustain. In the end, Serena agreed to a civil settlement. The money was returned, plus penalties. The beneficiary designation was corrected and notarized. With Harold present, there were no criminal charges filed. Harold told me that was my call, and I chose to direct the energy of it toward recovery rather than prosecution. That was my decision to make. And I made it. Tommy and I started talking again in late February. Carefully at first. Short phone calls. Then longer ones. He had moved into an apartment in Nashville and started seeing a therapist. He told me in March that he'd realized, with his therapist's help, that Serena's behavior toward me had echoed patterns in their marriage. He'd been minimizing for years. That she had been isolating him from his own judgment, long before they moved into my house. I didn't say "I told you so." That's not something I'd do. But I thought about Dorothy in our quiet bedroom 3 years ago saying, "There's something behind that smile." Jerry. She was right about everything. Tommy and I had dinner together in April for the first time. Just the two of us at a restaurant downtown. A place he'd liked since college. We talked for 3 hours. About his mother. About the railroad. About the birdhouse on the wall of my workshop that I told him was never coming down. About what comes next for both of us. Before he left, standing in the parking lot, he said, "Dad, I know I let you down." I put my hand on his shoulder. He's taller than me by about 2 inches. Always has been. But sometimes the young ones still need reminding that their father is there. "You did," I said, "and I need you to know that, not to hurt you, because you need to carry it clearly so it doesn't happen again." I paused. "But you're still my son, and that doesn't have an expiration date." He hugged me in that parking lot like a man who'd been walking through cold weather for a long time and finally got inside. I let him. I drove home Cougas with the windows down a little, even though April in Knoxville is still unpredictable. And I could smell the dogwoods coming in along the highway. I pulled into my driveway, sat for a moment looking at my house, the wraparound porch, the workshop light I'd left on out back, the blue curtains visible through the front window. In my workshop that night, I sat at my bench for a long time. I looked at the birdhouse and the little hammer and Eleanor's Dorothy's photograph propped against the coffee tin where I keep my pencils. I thought about what I'd said to Tommy, that it doesn't have an expiration date. Love doesn't, but silence does. Silence has a shelf life. And when it goes bad, it poisons everything around it. I let mine go too long. Kept telling myself it wasn't serious enough, wasn't certain enough, wasn't worth the cost of saying out loud. And all that time, a quiet and patient hand was rerouting the train. I'm telling you this because I know there are men out there my age who are going through a version of this and calling it something else. A rough patch. An adjustment period. Just family stuff. I was that man for 5 months. I understand the instinct to wait, to hope, to protect people from consequences they brought on themselves. But I'll tell you what I learned on a kitchen floor in Mobile. No. I'll tell you what I learned at a dining room table in Knoxville. In my own house. With my wife's good china, and her recipe biscuits, and her blue curtains, and 34 years of her in every corner of every room, you are not betraying the people you love by protecting what they don't have the right to take. Sometimes protecting yourself is the most loving thing left to do. Not because it saves you, but because it's the only thing that might still save them. Keep your notebook. Know your accounts. Trust the instinct that built whatever you built. And don't wait until they're at the jewelry box to pick up the phone. I'm Gerald Whitfield. I'm 67 years old. I built this house with my own hands. And I'm still in it. If this story sounds like someone you know, if it sounds like you, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And stay for the next one.